Welcome, curious minds. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into a concept we hear about constantly,
hmm
right? Business, life, personal growth, strategy. But what does it really mean? Feels like we often just scratch the surface.
It's a great question. And yeah, that's exactly our mission today. We're diving into some powerful source material that really redefines strategy. It pushes us way beyond, simple checklists or quick fixes.
Okay.
The goal is to pull out the most impactful stuff, give you a shortcut, basically, to being genuinely well-informed on making better plans.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Mm.
So the material highlights four key threads, really interconnected, that are essential to understanding strategy. Things that are, and I like this quote, everywhere we look and easy to ignore. What are these elements?
Yeah, those four pillars are time, games, empathy, and systems. Think of them as the hidden architecture, maybe, the foundation of effective strategy.
Okay.
And by the end of this, you'll see how they all weave together, supporting each other, building up this richer, more actionable idea of what strategy truly is.
All right, so let's start by deconstructing strategy itself. The material seems pretty clear on what strategy isn't. What are some of those common ideas it pushes back against?
Yeah, it's very clear. Strategy isn't a map, definitely not. Or a simple to-do list. It's not even just a goal. And it's
hmm
certainly not a guarantee. The source explicitly says it's not a procedure. You can't just follow steps 1, 2, 3, and boom, strategy success. It doesn't work that way.
That's a really crucial distinction, isn't it? Because we often default to thinking of it as a fixed plan. So if it's not a map, what is it then? What's the core idea here?
Well, the key insight is that strategy is much more like a compass. It's a flexible guide, right, for making choices today to improve tomorrow. It's the hard work of choosing what to do today to make tomorrow better.
Choosing today for tomorrow.
Yeah, it's about constant navigation, finding your way, not just following a pre-drawn route.
And what happens if you don't really engage with strategy? The material talks about this non-strategy state. What does that look like? What are the risks?
Right, the non-strategy. Often it just looks like taking what you can get, hustling for attention maybe, or just following instructions, going through the motions, driving fast but in circles, not really getting anywhere.
Just busy work.
Exactly. It's the comfort of compliance, just
Yeah.
fitting in, settling. And look, when you're faced with tons of choices, it's tempting, right, to just surrender your agency, put your head down. But strategy pushes you to actually try and make things better, not just float along.
It makes me think of that saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. But the source twists that a bit, doesn't it? What's the point it's making there?
Yeah, it says Rome was built in a day, which, okay, obviously wasn't finished in a day. It's still not finished.
Right.
But the moment they declared, this is Rome, planted that flag, it was Rome. Then the real work began, the endless effort to improve the system, grow the community.
Oh, okay.
So the insight for strategy is declare your intent, plant your flag, and then commit to continuously improving the system you're building. It's about being better, not done.
Better, not done.
I like that. It really reframes things away from just completion. So if strategy is this continuous improvement journey, how do we actually, start? The material talks about a blueprint, not as a fixed plan, but as an assertion, a kind of living commitment.
Exactly. That blueprint is how you connect your goals to your insights. Then you amplify that with your resources to actually make a difference. And this is where project work, as the source calls it, is really different from just having a job.
That's so.
Projects give you that freedom, that agency to navigate the systems around you and create meaningful change. And this change, it always happens over time, right? It's not some quick event. It's about building intentionally toward a future you want to see.
Okay, that flows perfectly into the second big element you mentioned, systems. We often think of systems as, I don't know, computers or something very formal, but this material defines them much more broadly.
Oh, definitely. It's not just built objects. It's
Yeah.
the complex interactions of culture, humans, nature, even chaos.
Yeah.
It uses that idea. You can't step in the same river twice.
Because your first step changed the river, and it changed you. It's that dynamic, interconnected web we're all part of.
And to help us picture these systems, you use the example, the buildings or the roads. What's that illustrating?
It's a great visual. Stuart Brand pointed out, you look at a map of Boston from, say, 1924 and compare it to today. Almost every single building has changed, but the major roads, very few have moved.
Huh. Interesting.
So buildings, the nodes in the system, they get replaced fairly often. But roads, the connections, the rules of the system, they fight like crazy to stay put.
Okay, so what's the actionable insight there?
If you want lasting change, you need to figure out which parts of the system are like those stubborn roads, the
Ah,
entrenched rules, the connections, and which are more like the buildings, more adaptable, trying to change your road head on, usually a losing battle, finding a building to influence, often much more effective.
that makes a lot of sense. So working with the system helps you like an unseen assistant, but working against it. It's like fighting a mysterious vandal, messing things up.
Right.
Is there a surprising example of that vandal?
Oh, the Michelin puncture-proof tire story is perfect. Seemed like a brilliant idea, right? Safer, more convenient, better for everyone. $1 billion innovation, surely.
Yeah, sounds great.
But it failed because it worked against the existing system, specifically the local tire shops. Mechanics didn't want it. They'd need tough training, new equipment, and they lose all that steady income from fixing flats.
Ah, the incentives weren't aligned.
Exactly. So when customers actually needed service for these new tires, they couldn't get it easily. The vandal wasn't some evil person. It was the system itself, resisting a change that didn't fit its established ways of working.
Wow. That really makes you think about agency within systems. The material mentions two myths. Either you have unlimited power over systems or you have none at all. Where's the reality?
Yeah, it says the truth is somewhere between infinity and zero. We're definitely not powerless plankton just drifting along.
Right.
But systems are resilient, they do push back, so it's about understanding where you have leverage, where you can make a difference within that push and pull.
And just seeing the system can be powerful. There's that anecdote. Where's the meter? How does visibility change things?
It's fascinating. In this Amsterdam neighborhood, they found houses where the electric meter was in a visible spot, like the entrance hall, used about a third less electricity than houses where the meter was hidden down in the basement.
Just because people could see it?
Yeah, no one told them to use less. Simply seeing their consumption, seeing that part of the system operate, changed their behavior. So the insight is, making the unseen visible can be a surprisingly powerful strategic move.
That's a clear, simple example. What about something more complex, like the chocolate system it unpacks?
Yeah.
How does seeing that system lead to change?
Well, the typical commodity chocolate system often grinds down farmers, especially in places like Ghana and the Ivory Coast. It doesn't really reward quality or sustainability.
Right, it's just about volume and low price.
Exactly. But then you have people like Sean or Tony's Chocolonely or the company Original Beans. They're finding leverage points. They're creating new systems alongside the old one, direct trade, really vetting the bars, regenerating the land. They're applying pressure on the system at every step, building new channels.
So they're not trying to fix the whole thing overnight.
No, they're not single-handedly changing Halloween candy, but they're creating viable alternatives that governments, retailers, and importantly, conscious consumers are starting to respond to. It shows you can build new systems that challenge the old ones.
And this connects to the idea of agents of change, right? What are those in this context?
An agent of change is usually some kind of event, often technology, that puts stress on a system, forcing it to change its rules, its outputs. Think about the telegraph and the skyscraper.
Okay, how did that work?
Before the telephone, you couldn't really have huge office buildings. Why? Because getting messages around, like telegrams delivered by messengers, would just clog everything up. The system couldn't handle it. But the telephone. Suddenly, knowledge workers could communicate instantly from anywhere. That enabled skyscrapers, fundamentally changing real estate, city layouts. The system had to adapt.
Or like jaywalking. The arrival of cars completely changed the rules of the road, the hierarchy between pedestrians and vehicles. The system rewrote itself around the technology.
Precisely. And then there's the flip side, a cautionary tale. How NPR lost to the podcast.
What happened there?
NPR had everything needed for podcasting success, the content, the talent, the audience. But their strategy was focused on protecting their existing system, local radio spectrum, curated programming. They defended that system so hard.
That they missed the boat on the next wave.
Exactly. They missed the explosion in on-demand audio. Defending the status quo, which can be a valid strategy sometimes, blinded them to a huge systemic shift that ended up undermining their core value proposition in the long run.
And systems don't just yield, they actively fight back sometimes. The cheese bullies example really shows that, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You had powerful players in the traditional dairy industry actively working against plant-based ton companies, even taking back an award given to one.
Why? Was the plant-based cheese bad?
It wasn't about the product quality, it was about protecting their status and affiliation within the existing dairy system. They saw this newcomer as a threat not just to sales, but to their identity, their established norms. They valued the system itself over, well, innovation or consumer choice in this case.
It's amazing how deep that runs. The material also mentions 6 system traps, briefly things like the tragedy of the commons, where everyone acting in their own short-term interest depletes a shared resource.
Like farmers overgrazing shared land.
Right, or the race to the bottom, where competition just drives prices and quality down for everyone. These traps show how systems can naturally lead to bad outcomes if we're not careful.
For sure. But despite all these traps and vulnerabilities, the big takeaway is that resilient systems tend to stick around. They're good at weathering changes. And here's a key point. It's easiest to see a system when it stops functioning as it did.
When it breaks down.
Yeah, that breakdown reveals its underlying structure, its assumptions, its connections, and that's often your best chance to understand it and maybe intervene effectively.
Okay, let's pivot to the third thread, time.
Yeah.
This feels like a really crucial but often ignored part of strategy. The source says, time is all we've got, the scarce resource that fuels every project and bounds every strategy.
It's absolutely fundamental. And the way time impacts things is accelerating like crazy. Consider this. The telephone took something like 75 years to reach 1 million users.
Wow, 75 years.
Facebook did it in 10 months. Mr. Beast, he got 1 million subscribers to a new channel in less than 2 days with 1 video.
That's staggering.
It just shows the incredible power of network effects in today's connected world. A product or service gets more valuable the more people use it. A phone's useless if no one else has one, right?
Yeah.
That dynamic is now supercharged.
That speed is mind-bending. But the material also talks about the power of patience, of long-term investment, using the story of Justin Kobylka, the ball python breeder.
Yeah, slithering with patience. It's a fantastic case study in long-term thinking. He started with a small genetic advantage in his snakes and just kept reinvesting it year after year. He famously turned down huge offers, like $100,000 for certain snakes.
He turned down $100K. Why?
Because he saw them as crucial for his future work, for breeding even more valuable snakes later. He played the long game, building this incredibly resilient business where people now brag about having a Kobylka-line snake. It's like a real-world marshmallow test.
The marshmallow test.
That's cool.
Delaying gratification. How does that connect here?
The source makes the point that it's much easier not to eat the marshmallow right away if you understand and trust the path to getting that bonus marshmallow.
If you believe the future reward is real and achievable.
Exactly. You're investing based on trust in your own strategic path, your understanding of how time will yield results.
So how do we understand the way ideas spread over time? The material calls time the overlook axis and brings in models like the Gartner hype cycle.
Right, with its stages. Technology trigger, peak of inflated expectations, trough of disillusionment.
Slope of enlightenment, plateau of productivity, and then there's Rogers' adoption curve. Innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, laggards. What do these tell us strategically?
They show that new ideas don't just spread smoothly. You need different approaches for different phases, right? Winning over those first few innovators is very different from convincing the early majority.
And there's that crucial gap, the chasm.
Yes, the chasm between the early adopters, the visionaries, and the early majority, the pragmatists. And the warning is stark. The system, defender of the status quo, will work to keep it there.
Oh.
Through existing policies, through inertia, through fear of the new. Lots of genuinely good ideas die in that chasm because they can't make the leap to mainstream acceptance.
That sounds tough. How do you actually cross the chasm then? What can we learn from Wangari Maathai's Greenbelt movement?
Her story is incredible. She started so small, just planting a few trees with rural women, and eventually mobilized people to plant over 30 million trees. Wow.
Her success shows that systems problems demand system solutions. Crossing the chasm isn't just about having a better idea. It's about creating the conditions, building the support, the scaffolding, so that even the defenders of the status quo eventually see the benefit, or at least stop actively fighting it. You have to make it easy, maybe even desirable, for them to join in.
Building that scaffolding, which connects to another challenging idea: ignoring sunk costs. The material calls this simple but uncomfortable. Why uncomfortable?
Because it means walking away from things you've already invested in, time, money, energy, emotion, if they're no longer serving your path forward. And that's hard.
Yeah, imagine you poured your heart into a scene in a play, but audiences hate it. Or you got that degree, but now you want to do something totally different. It feels like you're walking away from your best work, from your dreams, from you, as the source puts it.
It does feel like that. But the core principle is what happened yesterday already happened. It's done. It might be an asset, a lesson learned, a gift from your past self,
Yeah.
but you don't have to accept it if you don't want to. So the focus has to be on today and tomorrow.
Absolutely. What choices now will make tomorrow better? Don't let past investments dictate a future that no longer makes sense. It's about reclaiming your agency in the present.
Okay, that's a powerful point. Let's move to our fourth thread, empathy and choices. Specifically, what do people really want? Beyond the basics, the material suggests we're driven by three core, often conflicting desires.
Yeah, it boils them down to affiliation, that need for community, to belong, to fit in, status, the pecking order, being seen as noteworthy, and freedom from fear.
Affiliation, status, freedom from
But
fear.
it also mentions those internal narratives we seek: joy, wonder, thrills, satisfaction. Those are powerful drivers too.
But then there are these two unseen desires that often mess with our supposedly rational choices. What are those?
These are really interesting. First, social adhesion, which is basically culture, summed up as people like us do things like this, that tribal pool. And second, resistance to substitution. Why do we stick with something familiar even when a seemingly better alternative exists? These two forces, social pressure and inertia, can be incredibly strong, often overriding logic.
The example used is the Prada baseball cap. It cost, what, $650? And functionally, it's no better than a cheap one.
Right. But for some people, in some circles, wearing that $650 cap provides status, signals affiliation. The social benefits make it a perceived bargain, even though rationally it makes no sense. It's not about the hat. It's about the story it tells and the group it connects you to.
It really makes you pause thinking about why we buy what we buy. So how does this understanding lead to strategic empathy?
Well, strategic empathy isn't sympathy, and it's definitely not trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes by asking, what would I do if I were them? Because you're not them.
Okay, so what is it?
It's acknowledging, I don't know what you know, see what you see, or believe what you believe, and that's okay. The goal isn't to change what people fundamentally want. It's to understand their perspective, their desires, their fears, and then help people get to where they've wanted to go all along.
Like Dorothy in Oz. She didn't convince the Lion, Tin Man, and Scarecrow by arguing with them about what they should want.
No. She created a situation, a journey, where by joining her, they could achieve what they already desired: courage, a heart, a brain, status, belonging. They acted in their own perceived self-interest, and she facilitated that.
Which leads to that kind of mind-bending idea.
Yeah.
Everyone is always right. What does that mean?
It means that from their perspective, within their understanding of the system and their incentives, people's actions usually make sense to them. They're asking, will this get me promoted? Is this safe for me? What will my peers think?
So understanding their right is key to strategy.
Absolutely. If you want to influence outcomes, you have to understand the calculus people are using, even if it seems irrational or counterproductive from the outside.
So, bringing this all together, how do we make better strategic choices ourselves? The material insists we have more freedom, agency, and influence than we dare to imagine. How do we exercise that?
It really hammers the point that you can choose. You choose your customers. You choose your competition. You choose who validates your work. You choose your distribution channels. These aren't just things that happen to you.
Can you give an example? Like choosing customers.
Sure. If you choose to serve, say, really demanding clients who always want custom work, super low prices, and constant hand-holding, well, that defines your days, your business model, everything.
All right.
But if you choose clients who see a high price as a signal of quality and value your expertise, that creates a completely different reality for you. The work itself and how you transact becomes signals about who you are and what you offer.
And distribution choices are just as powerful, like FTD or Steam.
Totally. FTD didn't change the flowers themselves. They changed how flowers got to people, building a whole new system. Steam let game developers bypass physical stores entirely. These choices put you in different systems, create different pressures, and result in different rewards. Choosing your distribution channel can fundamentally change your place in the market.
And underpinning all these choices is the need to say no. The source says every yes requires many no's, because time is limited, opportunity cost is real. What's the trap we fall into here?
The trap is analysis paralysis, basically. We get so worried about choosing the wrong path or missing out on something that rather than celebrate the paths not taken, we take no path at all.
So saying no frees you up.
It has to. Every time you commit time, effort, or money to one thing, you're implicitly saying no to countless other things you could have done with those resources. Being strategic means making those no's consciously to protect your most important yeses.
That's a really important framing. The no enables the yes. Which brings us towards the end, Thinking about elegant strategies. What makes a strategy elegant?
Elegant strategies, according to this material, are the ones that give you real leverage in service of the change we seek. They're efficient, they reduce waste, save energy, time, materials. They're resilient. They essentially put the system to work for you, not against you.
Finding that simplicity and effectiveness.
Exactly. The simplest way to get a disproportionately large impact.
And the material lists several types. Can you run through a few examples?
Sure, there's the classic low cost and low price, like Walmart. They built such a powerful system around logistics that they could sell things cheaper than rivals could even buy them. That's systemic advantage.
Right.
Then the network effect, Alcoholics Anonymous is a great example, or TED Talks. The more people participate, the more valuable the network becomes for everyone. Expertise and status, think Harvard or, again, TED. That reputation builds over time, attracting more talent, more resources, reinforcing the status. Affiliation drives brands that let people trade money for a sense of belonging. Committing to a technology curve, like chip makers following Moore's law, means riding a wave of predictable progress.
There's also the coyote strategy.
Yeah, the provocateur, like Andy Warhol maybe. Someone who finds the cracks in the system and uses them to create disruption and change. Even maintaining the status quo can be elegant, like Gartner's advice during the Y2K scare focused on stability.
And subscriptions for convenience.
Like Lester Wunderman selling oil heating subscriptions in France, peace of mind is valuable. And finally, reinvesting a head start, like our Python breeder, continuously building your lead so others can't catch up.
It seems like many of these elegant strategies start small, serving a smallest viable audience really well, building scaffolding around them.
Exactly. You start by delivering something extraordinary and powerful for a specific group. That success, that positive experience, creates the cultural or organizational support, the scaffolding, that makes it easier for others to join in later.
And what happens when that scaffolding is missing, even if the idea is good? The contrast between the kindergarten 100th day of school and kidney donation reform is striking here.
It really is. The 100th day idea spread like wildfire because kindergarten teachers operate in a system where they have autonomy, they're receptive nodes, eager to try fun things. The scaffolding was easy to build.
But kidney donation reform.
A brilliant, life-saving idea, but it stalled. Why? It ran into a much more rigid system, couldn't find enough receptive nodes, and didn't invest enough in building that supportive scaffolding or finding those key leveraged individuals to champion it. The lesson: good ideas aren't enough. You need to understand the system's receptiveness and actively build the support structure.
So thinking about our own decisions, the material distinguishes between a good decision and a good outcome. That feels important.
Hugely important. A good decision is based on the information you have and a rational assessment of the future. A good outcome. Well, luck plays a big role there.
Right.
Resilient strategies accept that luck exists. They account for it. You can make a perfect decision and still get unlucky, or make a questionable one and get lucky. The goal is a good process, not guaranteeing outcomes.
And what decision traps should we avoid?
One is bad luck paralysis, being so afraid of a bad outcome, even if you make a good decision, that you just do nothing. Another is the survivors are noteworthy bias.
Meaning we only see the winners.
Yeah, we see the successful startups, the best-selling authors, but we don't see the thousands who tried and failed with similar ideas or effort. It makes success look easier or more common than it is, skewing our perception of risk.
The material suggests seeking optionality, having an undo button, can help us embrace risk.
If you can easily backtrack, it's easier to say, sure, why not? Exactly. Lowering the cost of failure encourages experimentation. And it also advises thinking about money as a tool, not an emotion. Understanding opportunity costs, sunk costs, investment, seeing it rationally helps you use it strategically rather than being driven by fear or attachment.
This all builds towards a really significant point.
Yeah.
The only way to solve a system's problem is with a system solution. Individual action often isn't enough for big systemic issues.
Right. Leaded gas didn't vanish because everyone suddenly decided not to buy it. Governments banned a system-level change. CFCs and aerosols went away because the system figured out alternatives and regulations changed, not just individual boycotts.
It's a hard truth sometimes.
It is. Individual actions matter, they signal values, but for huge shifts, you usually need to change the rules of the system itself.
Which brings us to the example of climate change, framed as the strategic approach to the most urgent system change of our lifetimes. How is it viewed through this strategic lens?
It's framed primarily as an economic externality problem. We're effectively subsidizing the price of carbon, because the environmental cost isn't fully baked into the price of things like jet fuel or coal power. Everyone bears that cost eventually, not just the buyer or seller.
So the market isn't reflecting the true cost and the proposed elegant solution.
It's conceptually simple, though politically complex, obviously.
Yeah.
Charge a fair price for carbon pollution. The idea discussed is a carbon surcharge added to polluting goods and services.
Okay.
But then, and this is key, that money is returned directly to citizens, maybe as a monthly dividend check.
So it's revenue neutral for individuals overall.
Potentially, yes. But it creates a powerful market signal. Suddenly, cleaner options become cheaper. Businesses have a huge incentive to innovate low-carbon solutions. Consumers have an incentive to choose them. It harnesses those fundamental drivers: profit, stability, self-interest, to fix the problem the market created. It's a system-level nudge.
Fascinating. So wrapping up this deep dive, the ultimate message seems to be that strategy is a journey, not a one-off event. It requires constant pressure and chiseling. Because systems are resilient, they will seek to outlast you.
Yeah, they often have much longer attention spans than we do as individuals or even organizations. But, and this is the hopeful part, we are not plankton. The material constantly reminds us we have more freedom, agency, and influence than we dare to imagine.
The future isn't just something that happens to us.
Exactly. Our actions, or our inactions, create our future. We're not just responding, we're actively shaping it, whether we realize it or not.
So for everyone listening, what's the big takeaway? Understanding strategy means seeing these hidden forces, time, systems, empathy, and using that understanding to make deliberate choices. And it's not just for CEOs or generals.
Not at all. It's for anyone who wants to make an impact, big or small. In your own life, your community, your work, it's about being an active participant in shaping what comes next, not just a bystander.
So maybe a final thought to leave people with. When you look at the systems you're embedded in your workplace, your community, even your family, what are the hidden assumptions, the accepted norms that might actually be limiting your choices for tomorrow?
And following on that, what's one small, maybe elegant shift you could make today to start rewriting those rules, even just a little? Think about who benefits most from things staying exactly as they are. How could you gently or strategically nudge things in a better direction?
Go make a ruckus. Thoughtfully, strategically, go make a ruckus.